Divisional playoffs presented by TurboTax Live on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
Really like the Packers in that game. Monitor Aaron Donald's health, and I think Tampa keeps it close but loses. Warren Moon's in the Hall of Fame and the Canadian Hall of Fame. He's their greatest player as well ever. I grew up watching him at the University of Washington. 17 years he played as he got up there around 40. 9 of them a Pro Bowler, and he is now joining us, the Pro Football Hall of Famer Warren Moon. So it's interesting. I'm not generally, Warren, a huge fan of quarterbacks demanding a trade, but I do think Houston has shown an inability to function at even an average level for the last couple of years. And you do get to a point where, listen, pro athletes got about 10 years to hit it. He's had 2 ACL surgeries. He may be halfway home. Were you ever in an organization where you felt you just didn't have support? I got to get out of here, because that's kind of what I feel with Deshaun right now.
You know, I felt that way when I first went to Houston after they fired Hugh Campbell, who was my Canadian Football League coach, and they hired him as the coach in Houston. They got rid of him after a year and a half, and I just felt like there wasn't enough time for him to turn things around, because we took over a pretty bad franchise at that time. But they eventually got things turned around, and we became a pretty good football team. But yeah, you have those days where you don't know if you're going to get the support that you need moving forward so you can be a successful football team. And I'm sure that's what Deshaun feels right now, as he's had a couple of good years there winning the division. But this year, they just didn't put out a very good product on the football field in Houston. And he had legitimately some MVP numbers this year. You know, he threw for 33 touchdowns, over 4,800 yards, 70% completion. But you'd never know it because they didn't win any football games. So I'm sure he's a little bit soured about that, and the fact that they just haven't put a very competitive football team on the field. And he wants to know what they're going to do going forward, as they need to. Now they fill the general manager's role, but they also need to fill this coach's role.
They're the opposite of the Miami Dolphins. Miami did everything right, but struggled at quarterback. Houston does nothing right except the quarterback. So let's shift to Miami, where there are a story today in Miami where 3 players told the Miami Herald they don't see anything special with Tua. And with Josh Allen in their division and Belichick in their division and maybe soon Justin Fields in their division, Tua doesn't feel like there's a lot special there. So you tell me, is it too soon? Or with all the coaching kids get now at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, do we have to be more demanding your first 10 games as a pro?
You know, they do expect a lot more out of you as a high-round draft pick, especially as a quarterback. But I think in Tua's situation, he deserves a little bit more time because, one, this is a guy who most people didn't think maybe would ever play again. Now, all of a sudden, he comes into this season. People didn't think he would play at all this year, if at any, at the end of the season. So they put him on the field pretty early, and he had some success early, but he's still a rookie, and I think he still deserves a chance to go out there and show what he can do, fully healthy, not coming off of an injury, and having an offense that's more catered to what his abilities are. I don't know if that offense was catered to what his strengths are into this season, but I think with the new offensive coordinator, whoever they hire, that should be a guy who can take advantage of what his strengths are, and then we'll be able to see who the true Tua is.
So it's interesting. Kansas City made a very interesting decision. They didn't play, Warren, particularly well in December. They were rusty. And then they gave Mahomes week 17 off. And with a bye. So here comes Cleveland. Cleveland's feeling themselves. They're playing every week. They got momentum. So I want you to go to your career. You would think, Mahomes, Warren Moon, you never lose confidence. But I sit there and I think 20 days, that's a long time not to play. Are you a little worried about rust and trouble for the Chiefs?
I do worry about that with most teams because that is a long time to be off. And as a football player, you want to get into a rhythm and you kind of want to stay in that rhythm. And I even remember when I was with the Oilers my last year, we won 11 games in a row. And then we had the overall record, the best record. So we had to bye that first weekend. And we stood around for 2 weeks waiting to play. And we were a little bit stale when we came in against the Kansas City Chiefs and Joe Montana, and they had already had a game and they were in a rhythm. So I think it does play a part depending on how well you you manage that time when you are off, but 3 weeks is a long time, and you do worry about rust. You do worry about a team not being sharp when they first come out, and you don't want to let a underdog on the road get ahead in a game like that, because that's going to make it that much tougher to beat them if you come out a little bit stagnant offensively or defensively. So, yeah, that's the only thing that worries me about the Chiefs. The good thing is that they're rested. They're pretty healthy, and Andy Reid has a great record coming off of byes, so I think he knows how to handle his football team, but it does bother me a little bit. Yeah, that is a long time for anybody to be off from playing football.
So we have a history in the Pacific Northwest, and the Seahawks just were an enigma wrapped in a riddle. They got healthier at the end of the year offensively and somehow got significantly worse. They fired their offensive coordinator yesterday. It looks like a power struggle that one of them wanted to run, maybe one didn't. I don't know if Pete Carroll and Russ are the perfect combination. I think Pete likes defense and running games to win, and Russell wants to get out on the edges and do amazing things, but how do you explain the erosion of Seattle's offense post-Thanksgiving?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what they said they fired Brian Schottenheimer about, philosophical differences. I think, like you said, Pete wants to run the football. He wants to be a little bit more balanced than what the Seahawks were at the beginning of the season, even though they were throwing the ball all over the place. But they were winning football games, but it was, you just knew that somewhere along the line that was going to slow down. It always does. Every team starts out the season throwing the football all over the place, and it's somewhere during the season, maybe fifth, sixth game into the season, you settle down into the season, and people kind of figure out who you are, how to stop you, and stop the best things that you do. And now you've got to become what your bread and butter is. And they didn't really have a bread and butter after that. They wanted to be more of a running football team, but their running backs tended to be nicked up, and they didn't have that one bell cow that they could just really rely on week in and week out like they did when they had Marshawn Lynch. So if they want to become a more balanced football team going forward, they need to find out who that bell cow is going to be that they can rely on each and every week, that's going to give them somewhere between 80 and 110 yards a weekend, and then have a passing game that complements that. But they didn't have that this year.
Finally, Warren Moon joining us. You played until, how old were you, 41, 43? How old were you?
44.
Oh, my Lord. I thought Phillip Rivers played well. Breeze and Brady looked good. I thought Ben looked old. I thought he looked tired. It's not there. I thought in his last 7-8 games, he had one great half. That was against the Colts in the second half, where I really felt something happened at halftime. He had maybe it was a Red Bull. He had a lot of juice, but he looked old this year at the end. When did you know I'm done? Like, was it practice, your legs? When did you know?
It was off-season training for me. I just didn't want to